The Holy Gospel according to Luke. The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." The Lord replied, "If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it would obey you. Who among you would say to your slave who has just come in from plowing or tending sheep in the field, 'Come here at once and take your place at the table'? Would you not rather say to him, 'Prepare supper for me, put on your apron and serve me while I eat and drink. Later you may eat and drink'? Do you thank the slave for doing what was commanded? So you also, when you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are worthless slaves. We have done only what we ought to have done.'" The Gospel of the Lord. Okay, you may be seated. So, even though my friend Chuck isn't here, I've been still given strict orders to be quick today. So I'm going to do that, which is probably good, because when I read this starting a few weeks ago when Pastor first let me know that he was going to be gone, I actually went and asked him if he is plotting against me somehow to pick these scriptures when, like, oh, I'm just going to be gone during this week, because I don't want to really preach about that. I want Lisa to have to do it. It's a really tricky passage for me. It starts off in the beginning with this mustard seed parable. We've all heard the story about the tiny little mustard seed, the teeny tiny little mustard seed, and how small that tiny seed is. And you know, we've learned, I'm sure, about this tiny seed and what it grows into this horrifying bush that no one can control, way bigger than you'd think it would be. And, you know, so this is what Jesus is saying, and I have such a hard time with this, because it almost feels like a cheap magic trick. Like you'd be at a park or something, and you'd stop and you'd see some magician out there saying, "Watch me, I'm gonna take this tiny seed and poof, I'm going to turn it into a giant mulberry tree." It's like, it's so weird. I just don't understand. It seems like he's saying something really strange to me. And then he switches to this next part of this little talk he's having with his apostles, and it's about being a slave owner. And I'm thinking, I can't relate to being a slave owner. I don't have a slave. I have children who should be my slaves, but don't listen to me. You know, and I can relate to, like, do you really thank your children for doing the things they were supposed to do? Like, hey, you flushed the toilet. Good job. Like, I can kind of relate to that, but the rest of this with the slave, it's like it was really hard for me to kind of understand what a lot of this meant. So I had to look back a little bit. The very first thing that is said in this scripture today is the apostles saying to him, "Increase our faith." So I looked back at what they had just been talking about previous to this, which you probably heard about last week when I wasn't here. It was the part where he had just said, you're going to keep forgiving and forgiving over and over and over and over again. When someone comes to you and they ask for forgiveness, you're going to keep forgiving them over and over and over again. So when I reread it thinking about that, I imagined I can imagine what it would be like to have someone in your life who you had to constantly forgive over and over again. I mean, I'm sure we can all imagine that hypothetically. It's hard, right? I'm imagining that they're saying to him, please, like, if you're asking us to do this thing, you need to give us more faith. We can't do it with the amount we've got. How can we keep forgiving over and over and over and over again? We just can't do that. We need your help. And so when I read it that way, it seems more to me like what he's talking about is that even if all you have is a tiny piece of faith, just a tiny little shred, that's enough, because it's not about you having to go and do something with it. It's about what God is going to do with you. So it makes a little more sense. So this next part, then I'm thinking, okay, well, if now he's kind of lecturing me a little bit as a disciple and saying, you know, why quit your whining? Like, did you expect that I would ask you to serve me and then I would reward you? And I have to admit that I think a lot of us do, and I think there's a way in the world. I've heard lots of people over time share about their faith, and everyone's faith is what it is. But when I hear, I almost had this tragedy happen, but God saved me from it. Or, I had this thing that we almost lost our home, but it didn't happen, And I wonder, all of the things that I focus on, that it looks like I haven't gotten what I asked for. It looks like I haven't gotten what I prayed for. And I start to think, maybe I'm not doing this following God thing right. Maybe I don't have enough. Maybe I can't do a good job. So hopefully I'm reading this all right and not just finding it as a way to justify my own lack of faith. But I'm thinking that what we're really being told here today is that whenever it feels like we've got nothing left and we've got no more options of how we can fix a problem or make something better or do what needs to be done or save something or someone or reach out, when it seems like we don't have anything left, that tiny little bit of something that we have left is all we need to have, because that's where our faith in God would come in and say, I can't do this, so I need you to do it. So that's kind of how I read our scripture today. I hope, I know it's one of those things, it's not right or wrong. It's what we can learn from it and take from it. And I hope that each of us have those little moments where we are challenged a little bit and brought to that point where we're not sure if we know what we're doing, because I think we all should be humble about our faith and how we put it into action. So with that being said, let's move on. Amen.